Hello, everyone. Um, Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be in front of this group of valuable, very valuable people from all around the world, all around the region. I'm very excited to be here, especially in my home country, Istanbul, Turkey. And thank you for the organizing committee for having me here today. I have only 10 minutes, so I'd like to go over this quickly. I'll be talking about sustainability today. A little bit of background about me. I'm a civil engineer from Istanbul Technical University. After I graduated in 2000, I moved to the United States to get my MBA degree, and I ended up staying there for 12 years, working on buildings. I worked for a builder for 6 years. Then in 2006, I established my own company focusing on green buildings. I will tell you more about what green buildings are later on. These are some examples of the houses that I built in the Washington, D.C. area in the U.S. Then I moved back to my home country in 2012, 3 years ago, and I've been working on developing renewable energy power plants, wind, solar, and biogas. So I'd like to start with this picture. I'm sure many of you have seen this over the time. This actually shows how temperatures have been increasing on Earth. And this is not up for debate anymore. It is a reality, and it has dire impacts. So as the temperature increases, we start to experience severe weather events. I'm sure many of you have been actually experiencing these in your own countries. There are severe droughts or more rainy seasons, or the seasons are warmer than they usually are, they typically are, or cooler than typically are. We experience this in Turkey. So obviously, all of these have negative impacts on the environment and the people. One example could be the oceans are getting warmer, and so that changes the habitat of the creatures in the water, and that will have a negative impact on humanity as well. So people and the governments decided to do something about it. Finally, last year they got together in Paris and signed an agreement to reduce the carbon emissions, green gas emissions in the next decades and the following decades. Hopefully they will follow through in their promises, and we have our load to do as people. Together with that, also something else is happening around us. The oil prices have been coming down. So sustainability is no longer just about the environment. It's also about the economy and our future. So now we started talking about a post-oil future. So what does that mean for us? How do we get ready for that new era? Renewable energy obviously has been booming in the past. In fact, last year in 2015, there was an 8.3% capacity growth in renewable energy around the world. And it's also happening in Turkey. Until 2008, there was no renewable energy power plants in Turkey except hydroelectric power plants. Since then, we were able to develop more than 4,700 power plants, wind power plants, and more than 350 megawatts of solar power plants. And we also have given licenses for more than 20,000 megawatts of wind and solar power plants. So renewable energy is the future, and it's going to be booming in Turkey as well. So what is sustainability and why all this is important? Sustainability is basically the ability to sustain. And it's based on these three principles. These are called the three pillars of sustainability. Anything that you do to be sustainable is to be economical, it has to be environment conscious, and it has to be people oriented. You can apply this formula to anything that you do. It doesn't have to be about the environment only. It has to be your work or your personal lives. An example of a sustainable project is this one in Africa. In Africa, people do not have access to water. Actually, they do have water, but it's way underground. So it needs to be pumped up above the ground. So some governments or nonprofits go to these regions and install pumps together with solar panels. So what happens is the solar panels generate electricity that will run these pumps to get the water out of the ground for the people. So it is economic because once these are installed, you don't need to use any more electricity to run the pumps. It's environment friendly because you don't need to burn fossil fuels to run the pumps. And obviously, it's people-oriented. It's for the people's good. What I've done in my past, I mentioned that I built many green buildings, green homes. There are 5 aspects to a green home. The materials that you use in a building has to be environment friendly and healthy. They have to be energy efficient. The site that you pick for your house, for your building, has to be smart, because however energy efficient that you build it, if you build it far away from transportation or the main city, then you have to build the infrastructure to get to it. So it's not green from the get-go. It has to be water efficient, and the indoor environment has to be healthy as well. People spend more than 90% of their times inside buildings. And guess what? The air inside the buildings have 5 times more toxins than outside. So the air that we breathe is very important. Therefore, we have to pay attention to the building materials and the principles that we use when building these houses. So this is a picture of Istanbul. I moved back to Turkey to hopefully implement some of the experiences and the knowledge that I learned from the US to Istanbul and to my country. Unfortunately, when Istanbul was expanding, they were not paying attention to sustainability. So it grew on its own. But we need to work harder now, as the municipality and the government is doing, to make this a more sustainable, more organized city. USGBC, United States Green Building Council, has a program called Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, LEED. And it has a program called Neighborhood Design. So in this neighborhood design program, you can look through some of the options, some of the aspects or features of a sustainable city and what it means. It has to be close to housing and jobs. It has to provide schools and local food production. These are just some examples. Renewable energy production, district heating and cooling. There are so many of these examples throughout the world, and we need to start implementing this in our region as well. There was a research done to compare the cities, 50 major cities in the world, in a sustainability index. Actually, they fared them amongst these 3 features that I told you about: people, planet, profit, which makes it sustainable. So Istanbul is ranked number 40 when it comes to people. For planet, we are ranked number 32, and for profit, we are ranked number 36. Overall, as you can see by the blue color, European cities fare much more better than the rest of the world. They lead the pack in sustainability. Unfortunately, the cities in our region are at the bottom of the list. So we need to start thinking about sustainability for our cities to improve not only people's economic lives, but also the environment and their social lives. I'd like to also leave you with another concept here today. It's called the life cycle analysis. So when we use materials such as a notebook, we have to think about not just the notebook itself, but the life cycle of that material. Where did that notebook come from? What trees did they have to cut? Were they planting more trees for the trees that they cut to make this notepad? And once you're done with the notepad, what's going to happen to it? Is it going to be recyclable? So we have to consider all of these facts from now on in our lives. We have to adapt these principles. So I talked about sustainability and the 3 principles, 3 features of it: social, environmental, and economic. You can apply these to anything that you do, as I said, in your lives, whatever line of work you're in, or even in politics. Whatever you do for the people, for your cities, for your work, has to be sustainable. And finally, this is our home, and it's beautiful, and there's no other home for us. So we need to do our best to keep it as beautiful as it is. Thank you.